Welcome to part 2 of this 4-part video series, The History of Agile. The goal of these videos is to explain the history of where Agile Scrum came from. Who contributed to this movement? And where it is going. And the big question, why is Agile the preferred method for product software development, delivery, and executing work? In Part 1, we discussed the origins of the scientific method and its evolution into the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, or PDCA cycle. In this episode, Part 2, we pick up where we left off by looking at the history of Lean. It is important that we understand PDCA and Lean are evolutionary components, the godparents, if you will, of Scrum. So let's start with the basic question, what is Lean? When we speak of lean manufacturing or lean production, we typically just say lean. The meaning of lean here is just like the everyday meaning. When the delicious bacon has no fat, it's lean. Lean production is focused on eliminating waste in every step of the manufacturing process, while creating a product that customers find valuable, all while making a good profit. Let's take a look at where the idea of lean manufacturing comes from. One of the first people who ran a business in a lean fashion was Henry Ford. Of course, we didn't call it lean back then, but what he did to improve modern manufacturing was decades ahead of his time. Two distinct aspects of Ford's company eliminated waste and helped his company operate lean. First, Henry Ford was being lean by simplifying his product line. He once famously said, "You can have your car in any color as long as it's black." Offering customers fewer choices meant fewer variables in car manufacturing, less paint colors to inventory, less changeover every time another car has to be painted a different color, fewer details for his salespeople to have to remember when writing up an order, fewer suppliers, and so on. Second, in about 1913, Ford revolutionized manufacturing, as we all learned in grade school, with the advent of the assembly line. Before the assembly line, Ford's company would build one whole car at a time. A new car wouldn't start to be built until he was done making the first one car at a time. With the assembly line, the employee at the beginning of the line puts a part on the car frame and only one part. They are a specialist in installing just their one part. Once that part is installed, the whole thing moves through the facility to the next person, who adds another part. And again, just one part. That part is his specialty, and so on, down the line it goes, until by the end of the conveyor, the car has all of its parts in place and it is ready for the customer. This exemplified the future of lean processes, as we would come to know them, eliminating unnecessary steps and overhandling of materials to improve volume and the speed of production. Ford's introduction to lean manufacturing were improved and modernized by Peter Drucker, a business consultant and author, a professor widely regarded with giving us the modern-day corporation structure as we know it. Drucker was not the father of lean, but neither was Ford. Still, their contributions to thinking about process improvement and the optimization of an operation deeply influence the lean process. Drucker always believed the customer's needs and wants have to come first before the company's needs and wants. It's hard to argue against it because a customer will only buy products that they want or that are somehow valuable to them, or to put it in business language, that has customer value. Peter Drucker was hired as a consultant and brought his customers first and process improvement ideas to General Motors, and they kicked him and his ideas out. You see, GM didn't like hearing the truth, the painful truth, that their products didn't offer a customer value that was different from their competitors. And their manufacturing processes were already efficient, despite recommendations from the esteemed consultant Drucker. What Drucker knew then, that GM wasn't ready to learn, is that sometimes the biggest burden to success is yourself. You have to objectively examine your product, your process, your ideas, your staff, and everything you do, and be willing to change. Be willing to admit that just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean we can afford to keep doing it that way. Success demands continuous improvement. Drucker is well known for his quote, "There's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all." You wouldn't vacuum your house really well before the maid came over to clean your house, would you? That wouldn't be very lean. Come look at the 1950s, as the world was climbing a path of prosperity and the height of the American middle class. An insignificant Japanese car company was struggling to make and sell cars, operating in a slow, methodical, yet chubby-like way. They couldn't manufacture them efficiently or profitably. The CEO sent his cousin from Japan to visit Ford's main manufacturing plant in Dearborn, Michigan, to learn better ways to make cars. At this time, Ford's ways were the best. That visitor from Japan was Eiji Toyoda. Does his name sound familiar? Spelled a little differently than you'd expect, but that's a marketing conversation for another video. What Toyoda-san, or Mr. Toyota in English, had seen was revolutionary compared to what his factory was doing. You see, the Toyota company in Japan was making 2,500 cars each year, but Henry Ford's factory was making 8,000 cars a day. The Toyota factory in the 50s wasn't efficient, and it certainly wasn't lean. To be lean, the Japanese automaker needed to create the most value while consuming the least amount of resources. That's the essence of lean. Yet Ford's manufacturing style and philosophy wasn't exactly right for the Japanese auto manufacturer. Mr. Toyota had to take the best parts of Henry Ford's ways and make it work for his company and for his customer. The Toyotas watched and learned from Ford, but immediately realized his style wouldn't work for their culture. The Japanese customer wanted more variety, more vehicle types to choose from, with small variations offered in each type. The Japanese workforce wasn't seen as a variable like it is in America. They can't lay off employees as easily. So once you've hired someone, you were committed, even if sales were slow. And post-World War II, the Japanese economy wasn't stable enough yet for Toyota Automotive to buy all of the latest, fastest, and most modern equipment. They needed to do it differently than Ford. Eiji Toyoda used a Japanese principle called Kaizen. Literally translates to change for better. In business, it's been adapted to mean continuous improvement, always looking for ways to eliminate unnecessary steps in doing something, always seeking ways to make your product better or stronger or more profitable by removing redundancy or scrap. If you can do the same task with fewer steps, you've applied Kaizen. You've made it lean. If you can service the same number of customers with fewer salespeople, you've applied Kaizen. You've made it lean. If you can write software by replicating other lines of code you've written before, rather than writing thousands of new lines, you've applied Kaizen. You've made it lean. The opposite of Kaizen, the opposite of lean, is a Rube Goldberg machine, named after a cartoonist who, in the 1930s, sarcastically drew a fictional machine called the self-operating napkin. It was a ridiculously overcomplicated contraption that took many steps to do a simple task. Today, there are fun competitions to encourage students to come up with machines that require too many steps to do something simple, like cracking an egg or hammering a nail. You can easily see that Rube Goldberg machines aren't lean. In business, lean is a process of cutting the fat. Extra fat makes things move slowly, use more energy and resources and more money and more time. In order for businesses to be healthy, it needs to operate as efficiently as possible, without waste. That's what lean processes are all about, continuously improving any process by removing waste in every step of manufacturing, really creating anything, not just widgets. Wait a second, what's a widget? Oh, that's just a generic word to mean any type of small mechanical device that you don't know the name of. A widget is a thingamabob, a doohickey, a gizmo, or what you call it. No matter what you call your product, whether it's a widget or a piece of software or a contract written by a lawyer, everyone needs to make more of them, faster, cheaper, with less fat, leaner. Let's make this tangible. Let's imagine that you run a company that makes action figures. You have a team of designers who draw and sculpt the toys and even paint them to have a mock-up or a sample one to look at. In fact, the design team will probably make several or a dozen samples until you get just the right one. Rocket Dog. Now that the action figure concept has been created, a team of engineers create molds, specify just the right type of plastic and metal materials, and figure out how your manufacturing team will make millions of Rocket Dog figurines to ship around the world. But Rocket Dog isn't ready to ship yet. The action figure needs to be protected from scratches while handling, so in a little plastic bag he goes. Then that bag goes into a pretty box, a box that will make people want to buy it. Don't forget to include the instruction sheet in the box along with your toll-free number so the customers can call you if they need help, or if your customer wants to buy more action figures from you. Making toys is fun, quick and easy. Well, it's fun anyway, but it isn't very lean. There are likely extra steps involved with extra materials that are slowing down production and wasting money, none of which create value for your customer. Let's take a look and apply lean thinking. To operate your business in a lean fashion, you need to eliminate all the waste you can. You and your team need to figure out ways to do things faster, make more Rocket Dog action figures. Your designers need to spend less time making designs which get thrown away. If your designers are given clear direction at the kickoff of a project, a better requirements document that outlines what is needed, wanted, and should be avoided, they can spend their time only improving on the best designs. The designs that actually meet the customer's needs and wants. Your engineers need to use equipment and materials that move quickly, or which you already have in your facilities. Your packaging people need to come up with a box that doesn't need a separate plastic bag. Who needs a bag in a box? Isn't that kind of redundant? Remember the toll-free number we printed on the instructions in case customers needed help or if they wanted to buy more action figures? Well, you'll have to pay people to answer phones. And when they aren't answering phones, just sitting at a quiet phone, you're still having to pay them. That's not very lean. If we eliminate the need for customer service staff to handle simple or wasteful customer contact, then the company will save wages, telephone expenses, and facilities costs to operate the 800 number office. We can't abandon the customer. We have to support them, but we have to do it in a lean manner. Maybe with a customer searchable, frequently asked questions database on a website, or a less expensive chat feature for one-to-one support. Other waste to be eliminated may come from your supplier networks. If you could automate ordering, say auto-filling of raw materials, either on a time schedule or an inventory-triggered event, your purchasing team spends less time placing orders. Even if it's a minor gain for one cycle, if it's a repeating cycle, gains will accumulate. If we know that every week someone needs to repeatedly order tiny masks for Rocket Dog, that could take a staff person an hour of time. They fill out the order form, they have to get the boss's approval, then they have to call the tiny mask company and place the order. They have to tell everyone that the masks have been ordered so that the warehouse people know to watch for an incoming order of tiny masks. It's a wasteful process. Instead, the tiny masks can be ordered on a schedule, in advance, without having to take up someone's time. That someone can be working on something else that needs help. Here's an example in your life where both you and your pharmacy are being lean, getting your prescriptions delivered to your home on autofill. This is a service where you sign up once with your pharmacy to have your prescriptions filled each month, automatically, without your having to call your doctor or the pharmacy. It's convenient for you, but it's also how drugstore chains have made their process more lean. They've eliminated waste. They don't have to pay employees for time servicing the in-store counter for handling an easy, repeatable transaction. If it takes 10 minutes for you to talk to the pharmacist, ask questions, talk about the weather, and what happens with 6 customers, that's an hour of the pharmacist's time where he's not doing pharmacist stuff. He's doing things, talking to you, which doesn't provide real product value. You have pharmacists to be pharmacists, not talkers. And customers get a benefit because they don't have to stop at the pharmacy as often, saving them time and effort. Now, instead of talking to your pharmacist, you could be riding a bike, reading a book, or eating bacon. The objective for lean is to create the most customer value with the least amount of resources. Remember, resources are time, material, people, space, effort, and everything that goes into making your product. The history of lean goes back in various forms, with influencers of all sorts. Drucker, Ford, Toyota, and countless others. No one sat down and wrote the concise How to Be Lean handbook, but Toyota is likely the closest to have synthesized its practice, called the Toyota Production System, or TPS. This diagram shows the Toyota Production System house, a lean practices paradigm credited to Taiichi Ono, Toyota's chief of production. The two main pillars are just in time, meaning we manage our supply chain to only stock what we need when we need it. The other pillar is jidoka, a term meaning that when there's a problem in the manufacturing line, we stop operations, address the problem, and then continue. These practices stand on the philosophical foundation of stability through the practice of haijunka, a term meaning we will use activities which reduce unevenness and waste. And we will practice kaizen, which is a pursuit of improvement from the factory floor all the way up to the CEO. Without getting into the weeds too deep, you can see there is an evolution of knowledge improvement and workflow improvement that led up to the use of lean in manufacturing. In our next video, The Dawn of Agile, you will see how the Agile movement became the next big step in product workflow, popularized by the software development industry.